Welcome to Surviving Ish podcast, y'all. So I identify myself, I guess, as a seasonal reader. I love to read, but I like it when it's dark outside and when it's cold and there's a fire. And so I don't do a lot of reading during the summer. Well, I got an email from someone who wanted to be a guest on our show. I was so honored, am so honored. And she sent me a book, and I can't wait to talk about this. So, Andrea, thank you for coming and being with me. And thank you for this, which we will talk more about this in detail. But thank you for this gift and for sharing this side of you, which again we'll talk more about. But how are you? Thank you for being here.
No, and thank you for having me, David. And thank you for well, it is winter, so thank you
Yeah.
for taking the time to read my
Yeah.
book.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm in Tennessee. And so the past couple of weeks we've had snow and more than what we normally do. Usually we'll get like one good snow a year. But I live in a valley. So when they call for snow, the weather's going to change within 10 minutes. So we go into chaos mode, right? Which is kind of what my surviving ish is the chaos mode of grocery store. Everybody's buying bread and milk and eggs, and then there's no snow. And then the next week they call for it again, and they've already cried wolf with us. And so now we're like, it's going to skip us again. We've run out of bread, we've run out of milk, we've run out of eggs, and we did not go to the store and we're snowed in. So
Albert,
exactly. So that's kind of been my ish is I don't know the right way to do things. I don't know what to wear. I don't know how to dress. Today, it's like 55 degrees. The sun's shining. It's gorgeous. We had horrible rainy weather yesterday, but now it's moved off to you. You have it today.
yes, and that's my ish too. And I know that I never know how it's been. Last weekend it was 80 degrees. This now it's like 55 here. I'm in Southern California,
Oh, wow.
and as the song goes, it never rains in Southern California except when it does. Well, it's actually raining today and another time, but it never rains in the fall.
Yeah.
Right at my book launch on October 14th. So I had planned this big party, speaking of weather, on a rooftop. And the space that I was using didn't have another indoor space. And I thought, oh, there's no problem. October, it doesn't rain. And I checked the weather, And then 3 days before, I checked the weather and it said October 14th, pouring. And it did. And that morning, I had to call and we had to pivot at the last minute. The only day it rained in all of October, all of September, in fact, until probably late November, the only time it rained. But it poured, kind of like it is
Wow.
today. And so we had to pivot. I had to go on for the Eventbrite people who weren't my friends. I had to kind of cancel for the people who were my friends. I was like, okay, we're having it at my house. And so it was actually funny enough, the first party I had at my house, this is not funny, my beautiful dog, who was a St. Bernard, was very, very protective and she had passed away. And we never had visitors in our house for years because, when you have 125-pound dog who growls at everyone who comes in the house,
Uh-huh.
not protective. So that was the first time I learned she thinks my house is really good for entertaining. And everybody showed up in the rain and we ended up pivoting and it all worked out. And, I had to kind of breathe through it. And it was a big day. I had all these radio interviews in the morning, so I really couldn't worry about it. And God bless my nice, patient husband because he really pitched in and helped me that day.
Yeah, I love that. So I wonder though, if you know how they say that rain on a wedding day is actually good luck.
Oh, I hadn't thought of
So I wonder, and honestly, I'm going to choose to look at it that way.
that. What actually ended up surprising everyone because, the topic is a little bit hard. I won't get into that, but it ended up becoming a USA Today bestseller. So maybe, I mean, there were whole issues that day. Amazon was running out of books. They ended up ordering more, but it was all good
Wow.
problems. So we had an unexpected, a lot of people bought the book. I worked very hard before the book came out to really publicize, but it was good luck. And it was really, it was such a good part. It was so fun.
Yeah.
It was so nice to, in the end, it ended up being my really close friends and not like a lot of other people,
Sure.
but like 30 people, like, not like my 30 good friends. And so it was so nice and fun. So whatever it was good luck. And the whole it's been, it's been an adventure since
Yeah.
then.
Yeah, yeah, and I do wanna go ahead and, and jump into the book because I already have a lot of questions. One thing I will say, though, is you, did not let the rain defer you from the party. You still had a lovely time, and it doesn't rain often where you're at, and it's raining today as you're a guest on my show, so maybe that's a good sign. Maybe this is just gonna be a groundbreaking episode for Surviving-ish podcast, so and I'm here for it.
But
Yeah. So, so your book is a memoir, and if you don't mind, and I'm gonna post, to the listeners, I'm gonna post the links to the book, but this is such a pretty picture and it is a memoir. And on the back, I want to read a line or two. It says, uh, your father was giving you a bath. Um, okay, it says, Andrea is 4 and I don't have my glasses, can you tell? Andrea's 4.5, um, the first time her father David gave her a bath. Although she was young, she knew there was something strange about the way he is touching her. When her mother Marlene walked in to check on them, she howls and crumbles to the floor. And when she opens her eyes, she is blind. Marlene's hysterical blindness lasts for weeks, but her willful blindness lasts for decades. And, you and I had talked before we hit record that this is a hard read. But these are the stories. These are real stories, and they need to be told, and I think it's so empowering. I people ask me all the time why I talk about my hate crime so much, why I wanted to have a podcast that was about a time where I was raped and almost murdered simply for being gay. And it's a way for me to bring awareness. It's a way for me to help people, and it makes it not so in vain. And it is a huge part of my healing. And the people that I have come across that have been greatly involved in my healing are people that I would not have come across had it not been for this platform, had it not been for what had happened to me and the way that I chose to heal and control it going forward. So I would like your thoughts on that.
Well, actually, that's the for me. I started this book. Had always been a writer, so writing is my thing. But I had not really ever meant to write a memoir, or really meant to tell this story. And I made the decision to do that actually right around the Me Too movement because I kept reading other people's stories, and I realized that I could not only help myself maybe at another level of healing, but also help another survivor. And since that time, I've been able to, I really look at this as trauma happens, right? And I've been able to, this was terrible. What lasted, the abuse from my father lasted until I was almost 13. It was really traumatic. And as a result of it, I had other traumatic experiences. Um, but I could, shut it in a box, which is we'll talk about that, what I tried to do. But I could embrace it. I can make it go away. I'd rather it didn't happen. But by embracing it, I can turn this time in my life into something meaningful and purposeful. The amazing part of it is much like you with your podcast, is this book started kind of a platform, so to speak. It allows me now, since that time, I've spoken publicly on the issue of childhood sexual abuse. I have become a member of the UCLA Rape Treatment Center Advisory Board. I volunteer with children who are going through the same thing. And it's really, I've had the opportunity to speak other places, the Rape and Incest National Network, I've been connected to now. And I've had amazing opportunities, but all of it is about embracing this trauma and helping other people. In every single bookstore I go to, every single one, I have someone come up to me and thank me because they tell me that this is their story. And by doing this, I'm making them feel less alone. And it makes sense, right? I'm going to just jump in with the statistics real quick because,
Please.
this is a crime of opportunity. It's 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys will be this is reported crimes, sexually assaulted before the age of 18. And 90% of those assaults happen by or occur or are perpetrated by someone they know. Is so I'm not, I wrote a book about it and but I'm not alone. This has happened to a lot of people. Every time I go into a room, I look at it and I go, I am so not alone with this.
Yeah, it's definitely devastating. I have, some friends that are school teachers, and and they have a class that they take on how to recognize when things could be occurring at home to their students, and it my rate happened, when I was 34 years old. It happened 10 years ago, and I was an adult, but knowing what that did to me and how that one night from a stranger, I did not know this man. He saw me at a bar, followed me home, broke in my house, and the way that that one night that I don't even remember because of the trauma, um, it changed the definition of sex for me. And so when you think of this happening to children, such as in your case, this was the first sexual experience. This was became your definition of sex. I don't wanna speak for you, but I could see how that could be sex can be a bad thing, right? And then there's shame that comes with it.
And it did. And I think that was I went through years and years. In my case too, so if we go back in time and look at it, I was only 4 and a half. And I saw on top of that, I saw my mother faint and go blind. And so I thought it was my fault. So I really believed that not only was I didn't really know it was sex yet. It took me a
Sure.
while to figure out that this was sex. I did eventually. But I think I started looking and I blamed myself. I thought I caused my mother to go blind. I really thought I caused her to go blind. And I thought it was my fault. And as I got older, later, my father told me it was my fault. And I started thinking that there was something about me that was too sexy, too provocative that I caused these things to happen. I was it took me a really long time. I like to say my ability for intimacy was severed at a young age, and it took me a really long time and a lot of therapy to come back the other way.
Yeah, absolutely. And so do you, first I wanna say this. If I ever ask a question that you, don't wanna answer, we're not live, you can tell me that, we move forward, there's never any hard feelings. I've never run into that problem, but I just like to give the comfort of for you to know that. Did you and your father or mother, have conversations of, "You're not to tell anyone, this stays between us," or did you just know not to?
Well, my father definitely I did. And I absolutely did. And my mother didn't talk about it. My mother refused to acknowledge that it was happening. So there were no conversations. She just she refused to acknowledge it. She wouldn't. even, I mean, there were definite signs. She knew it was happening,
Sure.
but she didn't. My father told me when I right after the first time that I was not to tell anyone.
Yeah.
That it was to be our secret, and I should keep it as our secret, and that it was my fault, and that I could kill my mother if she found out. S-
Wow.
That was part of it. As I got older, I got closer to telling. And what my father did as I got older, my father was a literature professor. And my family was a family where books played a big role. And what my father told me was, he left me a copy of the Scarlet Letter on my bed. And if your readers are not familiar or didn't read the Scarlet Letter in high school, that book basically is about it was written in the 1800s around the Civil War time by Nathaniel Hawthorne, but it takes place in the 1600s. And it's about a young woman named Hester Prynne who is married and has an affair with a married pastor. And as they get caught, he gets away scot-free, and she has to stand on a scaffold, and then she has to sew a scarlet A to her chest. The more popular movie with, I think, Lindsay Lohan, the Scarlet A kind of refers to it, but the reality is in the book, she was branded. And like that, I will be branded. I also thought my father would lock me away. I was very sure that he was going to lock me away if I tried to tell. So it was something I grew up, and that's my sister. I said, I read about it. It's in my book. It's in my mind. Do you really think that he would have done it? And she said, yes.
So that's what I want to ask you is, did you have siblings and did they experience, and I don't want you to speak for anyone, that you don't
Over
want to.
there on that, yeah.
Okay.
No, he's open to it. So no, I had a sister, one sister. She's 2.5 years younger than I was, and she did not experience this. But that said, my father was an alcoholic and also a very violent person. So he hit her more than he hit me. He
Oh,
hit
wow.
us, but he hit her more. And so we were different personality types. I am by nature more of a, good girl. And my sister was a little more rebellious and defiant than I was. So, but he would hit her and hard.
Wow.
It was a very brutal place that I grew up.
Yeah. Wow. And, we hear often how, this is a secret, because you're special. But your dad didn't take the special route. He didn't take this is between, you and I because you're special. And, it went into the, please.
Later, he did, not
Okay.
special. My father always treated me. I was very good at school, so he liked that. That was the whole thing. But yes, it went into the you're crazy. So almost like this isn't happening.
Uh,
But he did went into a little bit, like as I got older, he would tell me I was sexy. I was 10. Like, let's just put it into a 10-year-old is never sexy. Sexy, and your listeners might be a little younger, but Sophia Loren was very famous at the time, a very famous Italian actress. Sexy like Sophia Loren. And I was like, I look nothing like Sophia. I mean, and
wow.
so, but yes, he didn't go the special route in that. You know, I I realized quite young that I always knew there was something wrong with sure, in the book I do talk about like the steps of awareness to start understanding exactly why and what we were doing and why that was like uh, wrong. But I think it took me a long time to understand that he did this to me. I was not a participant in it.
Right. Yeah. And, I have another podcast that I work behind the scenes on. It's hosted by my friend Jenny, and it's called Unholier because she got out of this religious cult. And so we interview people who have been a part of some kind of religious cult and got out of it, deconstructed. And what I find so common is when it comes to a lot of the sexual abuse cases, and if religion is involved in any way at all, it's the girl, even the young girl, it is her responsibility to not lead a man, to not tempt a man. It is this young child's responsibility to not be sexy, to not be pretty, to be these things because that could provoke the man into doing something as if it's your responsibility and not the man's responsibility to control his thoughts and emotions. And so the guilt and the shame, and then when you put the religious factor on top of it, the fear of God,
Mhm.
it's just a cycle of, the victims feeling like they're not a victim, that they're the fault of.
Yeah. And the thing for me is like we didn't have a religious part in my family, although we
Right,
did quilt. I like we more had a harem. It was the cult of David for all, intents and purpose. My father was the cult leader, and we were, the girls of the cult. And my family was in very almost because I read a lot about cults. It was almost intensely nuclear, and it stayed that way. There wasn't a lot of room for third parties in our
right,
family. So.
yeah. Well, and with your dad being, you said he was a professor?
Mhm.
So, were you all just groomed, brainwashed, trained? I don't know what title you would like to put with it, but obviously, you went to public schooling, you were active in communities, so there was a life behind doors that was one way, but on that to the public eye, you had to be a different way, like
And Republican, had to be a different way. Although, interestingly enough, my family moved
oh, wow.
almost every year from kindergarten to eighth grade. I think I went to 8 different schools.
Wow, so there was no getting close.
Oh no, and I wasn't good at it anyway back
Sure.
then. Eighth grade, they kind of settled, but at that point, we were older. The sexual abuse had stopped, and they settled, but they were never really, I mean, my mother did end up teaching in a nearby school system, but they were not really part of the community that way, the way that some people are. We didn't believe in God in my family. My father didn't. And, academia was it. So certainly when his friends would come over, we always knew how to be perfect. And in front of my grandmother, in front of third parties, we always, we were cute little girls. We wore little matching outfits when we were young, and we always looked so perfectly groomed, and we looked like my sister started riding a horse, and had ballet lessons. So we did have all of those things, but you know, I knew better. I knew better at a very young age, not to tell anybody. It was to the outside world, even to relatives. We presented a front.
Yeah. So, are you the oldest or is your sister older?
Just-
Okay. Um, you had said this sexual abuse had stopped when you were 13, but did the physical and mental abuse continue?
Mental abuse continued, and I mean, it's complicated because my mother also kind of turned on me a little when I was young. But the physical abuse, I think for my sister when I was 13 more than me, it stopped. Then we moved to Pennsylvania, and I pretty much separate. I mean, although I lived in the home, I ended up, I mean, leaving high school or finishing high school. I came back to graduate a couple of years later, but I ended up leaving high school at like 15 and a half and going to community college. And And then when I got my license, I got a job. I had a job. I worked at a nursing home and in a clothing store. And I always had a job, actually, even and I started, you know, separating from the family a little bit. I had my classes. So there were moments. I mean, certainly I remember when I did get caught staying out all night. And my father, called me up and told me I was a slut and called me a cat on a hot tin roof. But, it wasn't like I was sort of divorced from it. I had once it stopped, and it stopped because he knew I would tell.
Mm,
Yes and no. I mean, there were terrible fights in the family. There was screaming and yelling, and it was definitely a brutal place. But as I got older, it sort of stopped. And my father was traveling more, so
yeah. Did he just was there always a lingering threat of knowing that even though I haven't touched you in so long, even though time has passed, you still can't tell. This is still a secret. This is
oh,
still
yeah, yeah,
unspoken.
always there, and there was always a threat. I was really scared. When I was young, I read the book Jane Eyre. I remember reading it, and in Jane Eyre, there's Mr. Rochester, and Jane Eyre's the nanny, and there's the mad woman in the alley. And I was like, "Oh," I used to think, I'm sure that that's the ex-wife, and I'm sure that he did something. And there was another book many years later that sort of made that positive that. But I thought he's gonna lie. I really believed he would put me away. And there was always this threat, and he was always everything was always you're hysterical, you're hysterical, you're hysterical. So
I really appreciate the vulnerability and sharing the way that you are. So where do you stand with your family now? Is there?
But so, and I think, we haven't really touched on, but in some ways the bigger wound was my mother.
Mm,
Yes, I really felt like she didn't protect me.
yeah,
And then two, my father was my father, and you know, incest is complicated, pedophilia is complicated. I, you know, there's when he's deceased, and when he died, I really felt nothing but relief. My mother was more complicated too, because I really loved my mother. I did. She was my mother. I truly believe there was a point in my life where she gave me the mother's love that every child gets, which is part of the resilience that I have internally. But I made a decision. So, I had a breakdown at one point. I went on about my life, and I was quite lucky. I did incredibly well at school, and I don't mind giving away stuff in the book. Book is well written enough that people should read it anyway. No,
right.
no,
Exactly.
but I did incredibly well in school. I went to college or went on my merry way, and I really, for a long time, much like my mother, I thought if I was smart enough, pretty enough, perfect enough, I could just pretend. I could put this whole thing in the box. I could pretend I came from a normal family and move on. Now, up to that point as a teenager, cut, stabbed at my body, and my body looked like a little road map of little cuts. But I thought I can move on. I'm done. I'm done with this. And, you know, honestly, that never happens, which is my message to survivors. You can never just move on. You have to tell somebody you need to get some kind of help.
Mm,
For me, it was therapy. I'm a big
yeah.
proponent of therapy. Some people have other means, but for me, it was therapy. And I, you know, so I kind of went on about my life. And when I was 33, I had a breakdown. So when you said 34, somebody grabbed my breast
Oh
and,
wow.
and when they grabbed my breast, I completely had a meltdown. I started having flashbacks. I really started having suicidal ideation, and I had panic attacks. And I finally had a panic attack and went to a therapist, and ultimately tried to confront my parents. They denied it, kept having, spiraling, and ultimately did 12 days in went to an inpatient facility, which really helped me
Mm.
and started what I call my road to healing. So I think I lost the question now, but
No, no, no.
I went on my road to healing, and I think that I when I was in therapy, I got the question back. Luckily, my memory is not completely shot. So my mother, I made the decision to keep my mother in my life. When I was in the inpatient program, and I knew that that meant keeping my father in my life, whether because she was not going to leave him. He did other things. He cheated on her with adult women, real women, not like, and God knows what he was a very flawed man, and she would not leave him, you know. So it was for her. She was 18 when she met him, or 15 when she met him, and 18 when they got married. He was 3 years older. She wasn't going anywhere. So would you mind if I took a sip of water?
No, please. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm getting over that little flea that was going around.
Yeah, no, you're okay. I'll pick up my water, my coffee. Like I want to be all lax and I want it to be like two friends on the couch, having a conversation. So do what you need to do.
So anyway, she wasn't gonna leave him, and I knew that. So I made a decision to keep her in my life.
Yeah.
And I didn't. I kept her in my life, which meant by default keeping him in my life. And I really see that at points, but it was a decision that I made. Some therapists told me it wasn't the best idea. Some helped me navigate it.
Mm.
But I just decided that I wanted to keep her in my life. So my mother is deceased, and in a tear-jerking moment in my book and in my life, my mother did apologize to me finally 2 weeks before she died.
Oh, wow.
Before. So I was 65 years old. So it was, a long time later.
Wow.
But so when my father died, it was really, that was right around the time of the MeToo movement all of a sudden, where I started writing the book. And I honestly just felt if I was, there was no good that he could have brought to the world. Unfortunately, I feel sorry for him. People ask me if I'd forgiven my parents, and I have forgiven my mother. But I have not forgiven my father. I will not forgive my father. But what I don't have is rage toward him anymore. I'm not angry. I feel sorry for him because he missed the opportunity to have these daughters. Like my sister and I are good people. We are, and he missed the opportunity to have us as real true daughters, and to have daughters love, and that makes me sad. Sometimes when I'm at a wedding and somebody gives a toast, a father gives a toast to a daughter, his daughter, and I I want to cry because I never had that, and my father never had that opportunity.
Yeah. Do you feel robbed of that?
I think, yeah. I mean, I think it's funny that you asked that question because it's one of the things I've been contemplating on the page lately is grief. I feel like I was robbed of having a childhood, and of that, a bit of a childhood altogether. I never knew how to play. Like I didn't play as a kid. I never got to play, and I kind of am a playful person, so it
Yeah.
was a bummer. And I feel I feel like I lost that opportunity. He took it away. And so, yeah, but I don't. I don't want to, I don't feel angry. So robbed feels like a hard word, but I mourn it. It's
Yeah.
more that I mourn it. It makes me very, very sad.
Yeah. Yeah, I started using the word robbed versus angry because I'm not angry at my, attacker any longer. Um, I have a love-hate relationship. I've had multiple conversations and even a couple episodes about the word forgiveness. They say, well, it's, for you and not for them. And I almost feel like sometimes that becomes like a toxic positivity kind of statement. And I didn't know this man that did this to me. That's where like our stories really differ, right? Like there was no relation. I wouldn't be able to pick him out of a lineup,
Right.
and so for me to forgive someone that I don't know or have a relationship with, and I don't know that that's required, for me to have to heal.
I agree. I mean, I'm on the same page with you on that. I've heard that a lot. And I think I don't think we should demand forgiveness out of victims. And we were both victims. And I'm really sorry about what you went through.
I don't think
You don't have to go through that. And, it's the world. Or these there are bad people, but mostly I hope that there's good people. That's my hope. But, like, I don't believe that you should my personal thing is we should not have to forgive. There's no we get to pick.
yeah,
And for some victims or survivors, as it were, and I use the term victim more than I used to because I never would use that term because I'm like, a crime was perpetrated against me and against you. And so, if like survivor is a good word, I like it. I'm taking it. I own that one too. But I'm not, I learned that from when I started working with UCLA Rape Treatment Center because they use victim. And I'm like, yes, this was a crime. I am a victim of a crime.
yes,
But I don't think I understand that for some people, it gives them that peace. And
sure,
for my mother, I felt more forgiveness. I really did. But for my father, this is unforgivable. It's not. For me, and I did know him. I mean, still, I'm his blood daughter.
yeah. I think we're the same person because I have the same, conversations with the word survivor and victim. I try to use the terminology when I'm having a podcast episode with someone or a conversation with someone. If they use the word survivor, then I will use that word, for them. What I don't like toxic positivity. And so when people want to, like when I say, I was a victim of a hate crime and they want to stop me and say, no, 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 you're a survivor. Well, I will let you know. And yes, I survived it, and yes, I'm thriving, but in that moment, when that person broke inside my home, when that person inserted himself into my body without permission, when that person was laying his hands on me, doing all the things that he did, I was a victim. I was a victim of something horrific, something brutal, just like you were, and I'm not going and I feel like the people that are telling me to use the word survivor are the ones that I almost had to convince that what happened to me was bad. You know?
Wait, I get that. I mean, I do use survivor a lot
See,
now.
me too.
The lexicon and everybody uses it. And
Yeah,
even in my book, I wrote, I didn't even like it back then. Even that was too much because I didn't want to pretend that I wanted to pretend that I didn't have anything to survive.
right.
It took me this is just recent for me, but really, I'm like, th-
Yeah,
is what it was.
yeah,
Well, let's not sugarcoat this. And I feel that way. And it's, victim and the forgiveness. And I'm like, if you can and you want to, and it's going to help you, then forgive. But if it's
absolutely.
not, you don't have to. And I had somebody on a podcast say, "Well, it's a very important part of healing is forgiveness. How did you forgive your father?" And I said, "I didn't." And then she just went, she
Yeah,
started shocked her.
yeah,
Why I was like, I can't pretend that I did, and I can't
right.
pretend I really don't want to, and that's my choice as a victim of the crime he perpetrated against me now. Again, I think robbed is good. Yes, he robbed me of my childhood. And he robbed himself of an opportunity to know me in a healthy way. He's a sad, sad person. I mean, I feel bad for him. He's a person, who, and uh, neither of his daughters have any good memory of him. And when I wrote this book, it was very, I knew that I was going to be kind of talking about my parents in a negative way, obviously. I mean, it's negative. My mother, instead of loving me more, she kind of turned away from me after she got her sleep back. And my father committed his crime, you know, and I the I lost my train again. Parents, and I have I I I sit there and I go, I really lost my train this time, David. So
It's okay. I mean, that's what happens with these conversations. We're trying to fit a whole lifetime into an hour.
I know you're telling me what I'm doing, but
Yeah.
so you know, but in any event, you know, my I feel sorry for them. I do. I feel sorry for both of them. It was easier to forgive her. I overthought that she was groomed. I felt that my mother was groomed by my father in a
That
way.
that was gonna be my next question for you because I've done a lot of research in, generational abuse. And when we think of, the generations, especially when you get to, maybe a mother's generation, um, e even if there was abuse, you sit down, you shut up, and you take it because you have, the man that makes the money. Your job is to do this, and you're not be able to survive without the man. So you sit down, you shut up, you take it, you turn a blind eye, and then on the man's side of it, I know that even in 10 years ago when my attack happened, when the guy turned himself in for murder, on the discoveries, the cop says, "Well, it sounds like 2 guys were fighting out in the front yard and one of them lost." That's not what happened. But as men, we're told to, you can't be traumatized. You go out, you fight out in the backyard, you shake hands, you drink a beer, and you forget about it. And you move on, you go back to the coal mine or whatever. And that's not the way trauma works. And so have you found any history with both parents, like with your mom in abuse or your dad being abused?
For my mother, no, I haven't. My mother, I believe in my heart that she was, but I don't know who. I know who it was. I don't. I also believe in my heart it wasn't my grandfather. And I have talked to my mother's siblings about it. My uncle read the book. My aunt decided not to, and my uncle's wife read the book. And we really agree that it wasn't my maternal grandfather did not abuse her, but whether someone did, I can't, it just feels so intergenerational, right? And who knows, maybe it was someone back, maybe it's from way back when, generations ago in Europe but so I never found it with my mother. But we go back in time when we're looking at like where my mother was. And again, this isn't to make excuses for her,
Sure.
but you know, she was 18 when she married him. He didn't have a college education. By the time that the abuse started, she was what, 24? And she had two little girls. Or and kind of this crazy husband that she picked. I mean, my father was also an alcoholic, and it was sure one of the things that were already starting to show. And so she, this was in I this all started in 19 I was born in 1958. This all started in 1962. I mean, 62. And, my mother couldn't women could not even get a credit card. I believe it was
Right.
1974.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how she ultimately went back to school, but, you know, where was she gonna go? And I don't think she wanted to go back. My mother came from from they both grew up in the Bronx, but she grew up in a building where all his family members lived. Everybody knew each other. It was almost an extension of the Polish ghetto, so to speak. They were Jewish. She didn't want to go back to the neighborhood. She didn't want to go back to that. She didn't want to go back in failure. Is this a good reason? No. But the reason is it, a reason for her to look the other way, I guess. My father allegedly, and everything with my father is alleged because there was a lot of lies in my father's life. Right? He also forged his PhD at one point. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, yeah. So and got caught. And my father allegedly was abused by his mother, not sexually, but physically. You know, as a little boy, of the story is she tied him to a tree and used to chain him out there. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. She was really mean to him. I know that. I know she was mean to him even as an adult. My aunt said the way she used to speak to him was horrendous. So I even as an adult, in his 20s. So I know that there was some parental abuse from on his side. But I don't know more. I can't tell. I had suspicions on my mother's side, but I don't feel comfortable saying.
Sure, sure. And I like the way that you said, when we talk about these things, it's not to try to find excuses or to justify, but until we get to the core of the problem, right? Like the person that attacked me, he had been kicked out of the military for marijuana. Like nothing crazy. There wasn't anything on his background of rape, attempted murder, hating gay people, so I don't think he was just sitting on his couch eating a bowl of Fruity Pebbles one morning and thought, I'm gonna go kill somebody. Like, I don't think it happened like that. I think that, in my case, I think that I walked into the bar where he saw me and, I was triggering to him because I was everything that maybe he wanted to be. And I don't mean that as a gay man, and he was wanting to be gay, maybe, but I was confident, I was secure, I wasn't hiding behind, and I think that, until we have to recognize these things in order to get to the core of the problem. And until we do that, things are going to keep happening. And so I don't think that we're looking to make excuses or to justify anything, but we have to find those common links to
Yeah.
what causes people to do these horrific things, to know how to maybe stop it.
I think so, and we don't. It's really hard to tell with, especially with incest. But I do
Yeah.
know intergenerational, and you usually find that people who abuse have been abused.
Yeah.
Now, it would not surprise me if both had been
Yeah.
sexually abused. It certainly wouldn't. Um, I don't know the answer to it. Um, what I do know is that, I think my father did groom my mother a bit. We do documentary screenings sometimes. And this panel that I was the moderator on, it was for a movie called Great Photo, Lovely Life. And in the movie, it's about the grandfather was the pedophile who abused the mother. And I thought to myself, I literally shuddered because I thought, oh my God, this man is my father. Like, are all these men the same? I was watching him groom, and then as I watched the movie and his relationship with the director's grandmother, I went, oh my, this is the same. This is a grooming process. And I think that what I've read and what I've learned is that these men groom not only the victim, but they also warm the people in the victim's life. And to some extent, my mother was groomed. She also, it was a life. He was good to her on many levels, but it was interesting for me to see. Again, these are not excuses. A mother should protect her children. And when I see mothers bringing their children in, well, I volunteer at this place called Stewart House, which is part of UCLA Rape Treatment Center. It's a program that they have for the children who have been abused. And they come in, and instead of going to 10 different places, they see the police and everybody else in like a single building. It's a single day. We have great forensic psychologists. And I volunteer as the play. I play with the kids in between their appointments. It's a great job.
I
For
bet.
someone who never knew how to play.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, when I see the mothers come in, when it is the stepfather or the father who's the biological father, and the mother is bringing the child in, those women are my heroes because I know how hard it is. And my mother just wasn't strong enough. It's really sad, but she really wasn't strong enough to protect me from like.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, and I'm gonna speak generally now, and if you know different or better, please correct me, but, I think that if someone had been abused in their past, they're easier groomed, because there's already that history, maybe?
Maybe. I don't know for sure. It's a really good question. I will ask the therapist.
Yeah, asking and get back with
I
us.
really don't know the answer to that, but it
Yeah,
does make it to me it makes sense.
yeah,
Well, especially if you haven't gotten help. And I think in what that's the other thing. We have to get help. Um, I know my mother, strangely enough, she had an eating disorder when she was a kid. And she was very and my grandmother, which really shocks me because my grandmother was not really a modern kind of person, but she sent my mother to a therapist. And we're going back into the
right.
into the early 50s. And for some reason, the psychiatrist asked my mother to bring my father in. She did. And she told me that the doctor told her, do not marry that boy. After one meeting, whatever you do not marry him. He will destroy your life.
Wow.
Got a lot. He's very ill. So, you know, it was obviously evident to others. For this doctor, you know, something triggered.
Right. Wow. Um, so okay. I have one more question and then I have more of a lighthearted question as we start to, get to the wrapping part. But with you coming public and you sharing your memoir and, it sounds like you've spoke to your family and said this is what I'm doing. Were they all supportive of it? Did you have backlash on it?
Well, my parents were deceased.
Mhm.
So that was kind of an easy thing. My sister was very supportive.
Mm.
My other family would be my parent, I don't know my father's that side of the family at all. He had cut ties, which is, not, makes sense in a lot of different ways, given
Sure.
everything I've told you. And my mother's family, I told them, and they were supportive because I was worried. And I was worried when they read the book because I said, I'm writing this book. This is what it's about, and I don't want you to hate me for it or even hate my mother. And my mother's brother and his wife said, no, we couldn't do either of those things. So they were. And my aunt never read the book, but she was supportive. But she said she wished she feels bad that she didn't protect, that she didn't know. When I said, and I think my cousins on that side have said, you know, you really were hid it so well. No one knew. And I said, yes, that was the thing. I hid it. I was very simple to hide it. I didn't want to deal with it. I did not want to live I didn't want to live as a survivor or a victim. I wanted to
Right.
it didn't exist. So they were supportive. I was nervous. Like I said, the bigger part of it has been the feeling of betrayal for my mother. And, it's funny because I had this US Daily Mail, not US Daily Mail, it was a Daily Mail, the British paper. And I had an interview with the person, with one of the interviewers. Um, she was an excellent interviewer, but it was the Daily Mail, so they do clickbait a little bit. And they had a picture of me as a baby and my mother, and the clickbait was something like, "Oh, I made my mother go blind when I was 4." And then you got into the whole story. But I started reading the comments. It got a lot of views, like 2 million views. I mean, the thing went relatively viral. And as I was reading the stories, the comments, people were saying such terrible things. And even as I've written the book about my mother, and that's taken me a little bit to get used to. I have to admit, like, and my sister's pretty good. She didn't protect us, and my therapist is really good too. I went back into therapy when I was writing this book.
Oh,
And
I'm sure.
and she's been really good, I've been she failed to protect you. You don't owe her. But that's been the harder part. But yeah, I was lucky. I know families can go all over the map, but I don't know if I wrote most of this book while my mother was still living. And it was hard. So my mother's always been a big cheerleader for my writing. And every time I have an event or, publish something, she's always been really excited. And, she told me at one point, "I know you're working on something, a book, and know it's about your father. And whatever it is, you shouldn't be doing it. And it's not true." And we said, "Okay." I was left it at that. And we never, so it was, she knew, but she didn't.
Yeah.
And one of my writing mentors told me, "You're not going to publish this till she dies anyway," which is true. So I didn't finish it till she died.
Yeah. Well, did you feel that with, was it an apology or just acknowledgement that she gave you a couple of weeks before she passed? Was the book mentioned in that at all? Like, I know that you are writing this book. Okay.
It's in the book. The scene is in the book, but
Yeah.
no, she told me she was sorry, that she was a terrible mother. And, I let her talk. I usually would stop her. I mean, to be fair to her, I would stop her, especially as she got old and sick, because she's so very, very frail. And I would stop her, and I didn't want her to be upset at that, especially. And I didn't. I let her talk. I let her talk for me as I was at that moment and for all the other iterations of me, the 4.5-year-old in the bathroom, the little 6-year-old I tried to tape up my mouth and my nose and kill myself at 6 to make, the 14-year-old whose body was a map of razor blade, and all the iterations of me who had survived the pain or the incest. And I let her and let her apologize. And uh, I forgave her, but not then. It took, I forgave her literally as she took her last breath. I really did. It was at that moment that I told her I forgave her. It was my last gift to her.
Wow. Wow. It's powerful. Do you think, um do you think that if there was any kind of an apology or conversation with your father before he passed, do you think it would have changed anything for you?
I don't know. I can't tell. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
a really interesting question. I don't know. There never would have been, honestly.
Yeah.
He wasn't capable of it. So I never really went down. So I don't know the answer to that. I was, of course, like to think yes,
Sure.
but I also would think that it would hurt. Like my mother's apology was authentic. I knew it. It felt real. I don't know if my father's dying deathbed confession would have been real.
Yeah.
And I don't think he would have given it. I was around him in his last couple of weeks. I don't think he would have given it. By that point, he was, my father, as he got older, in addition to alcohol, became a really pretty serious drug addict. So, the painkillers. that he took. He had to go for he was at that point going pharmacy to pharmacy to find people who would prescribe, so
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad that you got to a place where you stopped blaming yourself and thinking that you were responsible for these actions. And, I think that it's very important for people and a very powerful place for people to get to, regardless of what happens.
and I had kind of been there before, to be honest. I've had a really good life. After I got inpatient treatment, I got outpatient treatment, and I'd had a really good life, and I've been lucky. I have a really great husband. I've been married a long time. I do lots of yoga and stuff to keep my body and mind clear, and I have a good, I'm involved in a lot of community, and I have the ability to give back and do a lot of service. So, I'm really fortunate, but that last bit, it was that, and it's funny how that last bit is there, but you may not know it. But as I tell people, I think for all I went through a long, long period of abuse,
Yeah.
and healing's possible for me and possible for everyone. But as you know, from the horror that you experienced, from the crime that was perpetrated against you, healing is not, it doesn't end. It's
Yeah.
not like one day, that was a funny realization. You don't walk out one day and inpatient treatment or therapy and go, wow, I'm healed. Everything's perfect.
Yeah.
It's this.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
definitely is.
Yeah. And I love how you're saying that because, that's a conversation I've had with people is just because I may not have a victim mentality, with it, because I am on a different side, like on a healing side of it. It's not done. It's not healed. And his fingerprints are gonna be on my body until the day that I die, period. He violated me, you
Oh,
know? Now, what I choose to do with this going forward, I am in the driver's seat of that. But that does not erase his fingerprints.
yeah. I think it's the same for me. I have this,
100. Yeah.
exactly that same place. And, I've gotten older, and I've had lots of therapy, like I said, and I have lots of support. But, it's not what it would have been. I don't know what it would have been because I was so young, if not. And these events alter our lives. And but the gift is our ability to take something,
Yeah.
brace it, and move forward. And but the actual event, not a gift.
100%. I always tell people that we're not in the business to ever compare traumas. Like, whatever happened to me was the hardest thing that happened to me. What happened
Right.
to this person is the hardest thing that happened to that person. That's what I really love and respect about this community that I have is we don't say, well, we don't have to one up each other.
Or
But there are times I catch myself thinking in my head, um, if what I went through was with a stranger, this was with a person what you went through was with a person that was supposed to be your protector, was supposed to be your safe place.
but I do think, and I see a lot of children, and this is why it's become such an important thing. I never expected to have a mission. I call it my third act.
The
I do think that for children, it it's it can be it's worse. And
Oh, 100%. Yes.
your parents are supposed to protect you. And when the people who are supposed to protect you turn on you like that, how do you go forward?
Yeah.
It's a process. And that's why I really, really am like, please to people, be vigilant with your children, be thoughtful. And, and if they do for this, get them chill early. Because, you know, with one kind, it would be different. Everything could be different, and get them help. You can change the trajectory of their life. Look, I have a walking mirror. I know that. I there was a recent LA Times article, or New York Times article about the sex trafficking on Figueroa Street. It is there by the grace of God go I. I mean, seriously, one wrong choice, and I would have easily fallen prey to something like that.
Oh, yeah.
But as we see, I'm reading Virginia Roberts Giuffre's book uh, uh, right now, and I may have mispronounced her last names. Sorry about that
Mhm.
to her friends, but I, there, so that the it's, there for the grace of God go on that I wasn't sex trafficked. So if I had my gift that I really had as a young girl was my love of books and my academic abilities kind of was the one thing that kept me safe.
Yeah.
And I did get that from my mom. Even though my father was a literature professor, my mother gave me the gift of loving my books.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've loved this conversation, and I know they're hard to have, but we need to have them. And when people hear us talk and they see that, you know, we we still live, we're still alive, we're still flourishing, we're still doing the things. I know that so many people have reached out to me and they said, I didn't know it was okay for me to laugh until I heard you laughing. You
That's
know?
why I'd like to know, I'm still able to smile.
Yeah. Yeah.
And more able to smile. By embracing it and getting help for it and moving forward, you have the ability to live in sunlight, regardless of whether somebody tried to put a big cloud over your sun.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, we can laugh, of course, none of this is funny, but but we can smile and laugh about our lives. We can laugh about the fact that it rains on our publication day or that, the weather interferes with internet. Whatever the moment is, weather seems to be our topic today.
But I'm holding on to rain is good luck. I'm holding on to it.
Uh, Anyway, but we can laugh and joke and smile and live a life where, meet up with our friends, not just on a podcast.
Exactly.
Um,
Okay. So I want to ask you a fun question. And I say that I draw questions from the Ish Bowl. Um, uh, but I'm not going to draw a question. I'm going to ask you this question, but it's going to be on the latter hearted side, and I'm real excited to hear your answer with it. So a little preface is I always thought the inner child was just some bullshit therapy thing, until I fell in love with therapy. And then when I started getting to know myself again and really found that inner child in me. And after I did, I fell in love and so when you talked about, your job and how you get to play with these kids now, and eh, how where do you stand on inner child? Like, what do you do to nourish her? Do you like what are your thoughts on?
I told you I do lots of yoga, which helps me. But for nourishing that inner child, honestly, I love to dance. I don't dance even alone. I believe in dancing. I believe in the power of movement. Dance. At a wedding, our event, I'm the last one, I'm that old lady. I'm the crazy aunt that's last one up again.
Those are always my favorite ones to dance with.
I'm pretty good at it actually, but I've always loved to dance. I mean,
Yeah.
not ballerina dance, but just dance.
Yeah.
So that's one way. I think the other way, again, it's movement. It, um, I don't know. I love dogs. And now I get to do it with the kids.
Yeah.
I mean, I literally get on the floor and play with them.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't have kids because I really waited till I really need. I just by the time I felt healed enough to have kids, the opportunity to do so was pretty much over for me. And I I think so. Playing with the kids allows me that, and I just try to have moments of enjoying. Sometimes I'll listen to a tape or podcast that makes me laugh, and I'll
Yeah.
and, it's still sometimes, but dancing always does it. So I never say no to a wedding invite because now, I had read that there's and I have to really look into this, that there are like clubs now that are open at like 7 o'clock or 6:30, and they go to like 10:30. So I have to really look into it because I would absolutely go. I have
Yes.
a lot of younger friends. That's in my younger world, I have a lot of friends in their 30s, so it's, like, really good because I get that little bit of light and
Uh-huh.
sometimes I'll go on a yoga retreat and there's a dance night and we're just dan
Yes. Yeah, you know what? We need to bring back matinees. I need things. I need a 3:30 show because I want to be at home in my pajamas at 6 o'clock and probably winding down by 9, 10 o'clock. That's what I want. So I would go to a club at 3:30.
But I don't even go out until 1 at 6:30, truthfully, because I could dress up, put on stuff, wear the
Yeah.
dress,
Yeah.
and, pull out the stuff, the behind, and get dressed up and be as long as I could leave by around 10 o'clock, I have to be home because I cause to a pumpkin, Cinderella will lose her slipper.
Yes, exactly. And it's like, we have some really cool places here that do great drag shows. Well, they don't start until midnight.
Like, yes.
I'm asleep.
I know, right? Well, that's my thing too. I love music but I can't, at this point in my life, and I'm really not gonna go to the club with a lot of 20-year-olds who are meeting each other because are like a little inappropriate, but
Right.
so right now it's about weddings and events, but
Yes, yes, yes.
I read this online and I've been kind of promoting it to my friends. I'm like, it's like even my friends in their 30s, because a lot of them are kind of very, they go to bed early too. They got jobs and
Yeah.
just to find a place to go to dance.
Yes, let's
Otherwise,
normalize it.
otherwise it's my living room and it's me.
But you know what? I never get too mad at that either. One of the things that I do for my inner child is there's songs I love to sing. I'm a horrible, horrible singer.
And I work the same.
Uh-huh. Well, I'm horrible at it. And so when I have the house to myself, like right before a podcast and right after a podcast, because the conversations we have, they're hard sometimes. And so I already have a song that I'm going to hit play for all the speakers. Luckily, I don't have neighbors right up against my wall, so I can be as loud as I want. And I just belt it and I sing and kind of flit around the house. And that's my self care after a hard conversation.
Or I'm not a terrible singer and I love to sing. I do. I'm really bad when we're driving. In fact, I start belting it out and my husband just looks at me. I'm like, is it that bad? And he's like, yeah.
Yeah, or when you're so caught up in it, you don't realize the car beside you is just looking at you because they can actually hear you, and it's like, "Oh, sorry." Um,
Or like, I had a beautiful voice. I wanted to be one of those people who could be at a party and everybody's got a guitar and then this tourist down and they just belt out but and can belt things out. I mean, it's like,
I know, and I don't know if I did something in a different life or what, and my punishment is to come back into this life and not be able to carry a tune because my favorite thing to do is to sing. Everyone around me sings like angels from heaven, and I'm the only one that sounds like I'm like, I did something wrong somewhere.
right. I know the feeling. Funny.
Well, I have absolutely enjoyed this conversation. I'm so glad that you're able to jump back on because
Oh
I
my God, but so sometimes like, oh my God, speaking of a day where you're having kind of a moment,
the
right? Podcasts are different in flavor, as you know. And sometimes they go on and they take a while out of me and I'm like, can I end? And I was like, no, I'm really loving this.
oh, good. That makes me so happy. I
Wow,
wanted to do
talking to you was so fun.
thank you.
I knew the subject is dark, but it's really, I appreciate you having me in. or, and as we both walk through this healing journey together, I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate that I got to meet you.
Yeah, me too. And again, thank you for this. I'm reading it. I thank you so much, and I can't wait to share it. I'm going to share all the links, and then I told your people that I will keep you all posted on any links, release dates, and all that. They seem you got a great team. Like they
They're just amazing. I love them.
well
We're
while we were talking.
on the go. And I'm sort of like, oh my God, I missed them. I still have a research person. So
Yeah, well they're great.
we're the best. We could do a shout out to Mind Black Media.
Yeah. Yeah. They're great. I mean, even when because I just wanted to make sure that if we didn't, if you were not able to log back on, I wanted to make sure that you at least knew that I knew that it was probably weather, and so, but while we were talking right after you logged back in, they immediately emailed me back and they're like, "Oh, please keep us posted. We'll reach out to her." So I want to email them and let them know that there was a delay in responding to the email because you were able to get back on and we were good. But I will keep you all posted with all the links and everything. I love this conversation. This is such these conversations get me high, like these are highlights of my life. And I know that like I'm ready to go and be productive now. And that's when I know that I've had a great conversation. So my clean house is going to be because of you.
It was a really nice conversation. I appreciate you taking the time and bearing weather being our theme for the day.
Absolutely.
For
Well, like I said,
good luck.
yeah.
Podcast.
Yes. Thank you so, so much. And we'll definitely be in touch. Okay.